All right, hi everybody. How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Forest Therapeutics Podcast with your host. I'm Dr. B.
I'm Dr. Lakeith.
And this season we are introducing our brand new, newly added, highly educated co-host, Dr. Gigi Bell. Let's give it up for Dr. Gigi Bell, everybody. All right. So, Dr. Gigi Bell, we want to thank you and welcome you to the Forest Therapeutic Podcast. We're going to get into why you're here in a little bit. But one thing I want to say is that it's always great to be around other very successful Black people, because as a collective, I feel like we tend to give the population something different to look at and aspire to other than what's constantly being bombarded out there in the world. So I want to thank you for coming on, sharing your expertise with us this season, and being our brand new co-host. So I really do appreciate that. Can you introduce yourself to our audience just a little bit?
All right. Well, hello, everyone. So, Dr. Gigi Bell. I am a licensed clinical social worker.
Shout out to social workers.
Hey, social work. I'm also a PhD. I am a professor. I'm a founder.
We don't need to gloss over that. She has her PhD, everybody.
Yes.
Just want to point that out. She tried to. I'm also a PhD. No. Let that air out. Only 2% of the population
Pause on
has it.
Thank you.
There you go.
Thank
Go
you.
right ahead.
I am a college professor. I teach graduate social work studies. I stay in the clinical practice lane. That's my area. I'm a founder of Heart to Heart Wellness Center.
Yes.
Yes. Let's see. I'm from Kentucky. Love Kentucky. Actually, was born here in the D.C. area because I'm an Army brat. Okay. And then lived a lot of places, but Kentucky is what I call home. Let's see. Right now, I really balance all those things, right? So the professorship, running the business, seeing clients, it's a balancing act of all those pieces of life, as well as I like to enjoy life and have fun as much as I am working and giving back. So trying to find the balance of all those things, I would say.
Gigi, let me ask you another question. When it comes to your work, what are you most passionate about with what you do?
It's a great question. I would love to have a straightforward one answer, but this is the beauty of the work that we get to do, is that your interests and your passions can change and we can adapt to that change. So when I started, I loved working with kids. That's all I ever wanted to do, is work with kids. And I enjoyed it. And then over time, I was like, well, these kids.
Okay. It's a lot of energy here.
Yeah. So then I started focusing my attention on adults, but really it truly came from working with the kids and seeing the dynamic in the families, right? And realizing that if I wasn't able to impact the family dynamic, the impact I was going to have on that child individually was not what I needed it to be. So expanding my work into working with families. And then my interest got into holistic wellness many years ago. I started my practice in 2013, and I was really interested in holistic health and just understanding that having a singular focus or idea of what wellness is, in my opinion, is a detriment to trying to get well. There are so many levels and factors or domains that we have to address to become well or to stay well. So that was really important to me, and that led me to do this holistic wellness practice. So we had therapy and yoga and meditation, or a massage therapist, and had a nurse practitioner that would come in and do assessments and prescribe medicine, obviously. But what I loved about her was that she would always start with, how are you sleeping? And give you a really good sleep assessment. And also she was going to run blood work to see what your hormone levels are like, just really looking at the whole person. So I think I would still say that is my passion place, is not being so one-dimensional in what wellness is or looks like, but really looking at the whole person.
What inspired you? Because I don't want to move past that too quickly. I like everything you said, especially given the whole that a holistic approach is very, very important when it comes to a person's mental health. For those of you who may have seen our website and our profile, me and Keith have two different approaches to therapy. One of my big parts is Christian spiritual counseling. I think that a person's spiritual foundation, for those people who are spiritual, is very, very important to their mental health. So I just wanted to lay that as the foundation for the segue to the question of what, I guess, how do I want to say this and ask it? Why is that so important to you? That the way that you describe your holistic look to everything, why is that so important to Gigi, to Dr. Bell?
I think because in my education, because, you know, you go through school for such a span of time and things change over time, right?
Facts.
So at different points in my education, things were really taught very head on, right? You have depression, you have anxiety. These are the preferred treatments for depression and anxiety. It was very clear cut, research oriented, evidence based, but really clear cut. And as I kept going in my education, I started hearing other things, and we were talking about breath work, and we were talking things that I just was like, well, I hadn't learned that years ago. So I became just personally more interested in it, and then learning about the 8 domains of wellness and working with clients over time and seeing, okay, we've been working really, really hard on anxiety, and you're using all of your coping skills and you're doing everything just right. How is it that you're still not well, right? You're still not categorizing yourself or self-reporting wellness. Well, it's because we're ignoring all these other areas of your life. What's going on in your home? Are you good? Right? How's your finances?
Yes.
Are you good? Right? There's all of these other spaces in spirituality and social work. We do the biopsychosocial spiritual assessment, right? And we just tacked that spiritual on in the last couple of years, right?
That's important. It's important.
Because it is important. And even if you don't identify in a specific religion, I think in my practice, I teach that there's still spirituality amongst all of us. So whatever that looks like or feels like for you, and some clients will identify that as just finding grounding, right? So being in nature or grounding yourself with cold water or outside with your feet on the grass or whatever that looks like. But that is a sense of spirituality, and it is important that you have access to that within yourself.
Fair enough. No, I like that answer. Keith, let me ask you this question then, out of just pure curiosity, because you both took a very similar path as far as becoming clinical social workers, right? And one thing that I've learned from you, for those who don't know, I often say, who's the better clinician between me and Keith? It's Keith. Keith's been doing it longer. And in my humble opinion,
he's way better at theory.
Right. He always said I'm way better at theory than he is.
He is.
Mm-hmm.
So then, Keith, let me ask you this question in relation to what Dr. Bell had said, because it was very interesting when she said this part. During your career path, were you taught anything different as far as, because Dr. Bell, you said that they were missing certain things in the training, like they were doing very direct things, they were doing diagnosing, evidence-based treatment plan, things like that, but they were missing other pieces. Is that the same in your experience?
I would say yes, because, and I'll speak more so for social work, but I think it may apply universally to all disciplines. It really is the point in time and when you come into your education, when you come into your practice, where something is either starting to take off or has become a part of the structure of it, or it's just a situation where we just scratch the surface of it, right? So one example I can give is this. When I got my MSW, licensure was just becoming like this big requirement. Because I went into my MSW program thinking, okay, I'll get my MSW, I can do social work, I'll be perfectly fine. Imagine my surprise, the tail end of my MSW program, I find out this thing like, oh, well, you got to get licensed. You all got to get licensed. Because I will, Temple, I love you. You did a phenomenal job educating me. But I will talk about my time there when it came to licensure thing. Temple did not mention licensure to me until the last semester of my MSW program.
Oh, wow.
And I think it was also because during that time, Temple was just starting to realize that different jurisdictions were making a requirement that social workers really get licensed. So imagine my surprise 2 years after that when I landed in D.C. and I'm thinking like, okay, I got my MSW. I'm going to get a good job. I found out that DC put a policy in place where if you are someone who holds a social work degree, whether it's the BSW, the MSW, or even the DSW, you have to be licensed at that level in order to practice. And if you get hired by a job and you're not licensed, you have 90 days. And when I was talking to my elders in social work, they were like, it was never like this. It was never this push as far as you have to be required to practice, but it shifted. So to Dr. Gigi's point, it just depends on when you kind of come in, because the holistic, and it's funny that you mentioned that was something that I was conscious of in the context of doing the biopsychosocial assessment, because they added the spiritual component to it. So, okay, realizing how spirituality, religion, faith shapes people in their mental health. The holistic part, I didn't even know anything about that until my best friend, and you met Nicole, Dr. Edwards. Nicole decided post her MSW to go down this path of holistic practices, which was like, oh, okay. And so then I got introduced to Reiki and yoga and sound baths and things of that nature. And mind you, even at that point, if we're talking post MSW, because Nicole and I finished the same year, which was in 2014, that was still like 2-3 years after that. So my way of saying, when you do social work or any discipline, depending on when you come in, we know this much about our practice. This is how it goes. This is how it flows. And then it evolves. And then you end up having to kind of evolve with it. And your practice expands. And then you find maybe even new interests and things you want to do. But I give a shout out to Dr. Gigi, because the holistic approach is something that is a new phenomena being introduced to Black people, because historically we've never gotten it. Growing up, how many places have you ever heard of Black people going to do yoga?
No, yeah, you're 1,000% correct. I agree with that, because the reason why what caught my attention about that was, and even in your story, when I was getting my master's in clinical mental health counseling, they tell you day one, your license is at the end of this. So they even help you plan it out. It's cheaper to take the licensing exam while you're a student versus when you graduate. So they tell you roughly 2 courses right before you graduate, go ahead and sit to take the license exam. That way, when you pass the national counselor exam or the other one, I forget the other one's name. Forgive me, everybody. I'll tell you another time. Once you pass one of those two exams, they'll hold your scores until you produce this transcript and send it to them. The other thing that I thought was interesting was we're also taught not the traditional holistic approach, the way that you eloquently laid it out, but we are taught you have to take into account the totality of the person, whatever that looks like. They're physical, mental, spiritual. I'm pretty sure there's more refined language now, because it was years ago when I was in my master's program, but I thought that was very interesting, that how you gravitated naturally towards that, because in my opinion, I'm not saying it's you two's opinion, in my opinion, the mental health field, to include psychology or psychologists, counselors, and social workers, is very Eurocentrically medical model dominant.
Yes.
So if it does not sound scientific, it tends to be dismissed. So for me, this is just me, I feel like that is to the detriment of the population that we're supposed to serve. And when I was going through my master's program and through my doctoral program, I made it my personal mission to read books from non-white authors, because in their books they talk about the holistic approach to things. So that's why I thought it was fascinating that you naturally gravitated towards it, because I felt the same thing when I was going through my program, where I'm like, I don't know if 78% of African Americans identify with some religion. 72% of the American population identifies with a religion. Black people are more religious by and large than the national average. So I was never going to buy into, you can never tell me that a person's faith is not going to be a part of their mental health. But I digress. I just thought that was an interesting thing that you're gravitated towards.
Yeah, but my undergrad's in psychology, so that also might play a part. That totality and that brain function and that part was all really interesting to me. And then when I got into social work, we didn't talk about it as much in the same way. Yeah. But the connection piece being the totality and the holistic approach, I think that I might have naturally binded those two things. And then this is just an aside, but in my master's program, we had tracks that you had to choose from. So I chose a clinical track. And so they were preparing us for licensure, and like we were encouraged to take the first exam before we, not before. I think we had to actually have transcripts, but we were prepared to take that exam in May, and then by June, I was hired as a therapist in someone's office.
I wish. I can never forget it. Last semester in Dr. Israel Cologne, his class, he was the only professor that had mentioned, like, oh, well, you guys might want to consider licensure, and gave us a conversation about it. But he presented it in a way where it was like, oh, well, just something to think
just
about.
If you want to.
And so I'm not going to lie, I fumbled around for 2 years. Thinking like, oh, I don't really need it, until I landed down here and they're like, nah, you need that. You really need that.
Fair enough. I do, before I get to a very important question, I do want to talk more about, it's heart to heart, correct?
Yes.
How was it building and developing your own thing? What led you to want to build and develop your own thing?
That's a great question. So I was doing therapy for a large community mental health agency, and I was having a great experience. What I did learn in my master's program, I went to University of Louisville, shout out to the Cardinals. That program was really solid in that I do feel like they prepared us for all the different directions that you could go. Preparing meaning we were very informed of, like, you can go into school, you can go into like, I had a good snapshot, right? So I did the school social work as well as the clinical track. So I got certified as a school social worker. So this is how I landed my first job as a therapist. I'm going to schools every day, like 7 a.m. to 3, but then I'm coming back to the office and seeing clients in the office for the outpatient setting, working with children that were in foster care. It was very long days of wonderful, sweet little babies that were wearing me out. You hear me? So another opportunity came up to switch to a different organization doing in-home therapy, and I kept hearing how intense in-home therapy was. And again, in my grad program, they talked a lot about building your skill set. You want to take as many opportunities as you can to sharpen your skill set, do all the things, right? So I'm like, okay, I've spent time here. I'm going to move on to the next thing. Well, as I'm leaving all these schools that I'm working with through that community mental health agency, you know, the principals are like, oh, no, I can't believe you're leaving. Me being who I naturally am, I'm like, well, you know, you can contract with me directly because
I'm not mad at it.
Yeah, just contract with me.
If you want me that bad, well, here's my business card.
Mind you, I had no business card, but it sounded good. Exactly. Call me. I would love to run this program for you. Yes. And I'll tell you exactly how we'll fill in the gaps, as we always speak about in social work. We'll fill in the gaps between what services were being provided and where I see need that could be met. One of the principals bit. She wanted to know more. So I had to sit down and write a proposal about what that would actually look like. And as I sat and I wrote that out, there really were a lot of gaps in just that it almost felt like, and I see a lot of contracting agencies kind of feel like this to me, like just an easy place to get billing hours, right? And we were just showing up, we were seeing the kids. I'm not saying we weren't providing good services, but we weren't integrated into the school in a meaningful way. So I wrote out a program that did just that. She loved it. She wanted to work with me, but she didn't have the budget. So, okay, I go ahead and I do my in-home therapy, a job for maybe a year and a half. I get a random phone call. I'm in the drive-thru because, you know, in-home therapy, about that life, you in the streets every day. Just drive to the next place.
You're not cooking.
Right. I'm in the drive-thru line. I answer the phone, and it is the director of elementary education calling me from, you know, the school board office. And I'm like, oh, hey, girl. How are you? She was a principal when I was working with her, and at this point, she had risen in her career. She said, I thought about you. And I thought about, now. Yeah, we got the money now. And I said, oh my God, that's amazing. I've been looking forward to this call. I get off the phone with her. Immediately I'm Googling attorneys to figure out how to open an LLC. What does this look like? I go sign contracts. LLC, the ink was not dry. But
go ahead, tell the story.
But you know, it's okay because it's been a long time ago now. The ink was not dry on the LLC, but we got it done, and we were able to really create some meaningful work with those schools and implementing just safety nets in spaces with mental health, because I think if you're not integrating in a way that's meaningful, the kids aren't getting what they need, right? So it goes back to that family dynamics. That I was doing workshops for families and I was doing PD for the teachers, right? We all have to be speaking the same language and doing the same thing. So that gave me a passion for creating programming. I love, whether it's workshops or events or seminars, I love to create programming and things of that nature. So that sparked, well, why don't I open a brick and mortar location and we can put all the things I like in one spot. So I did.
I like that because me and Keith have learned. So everybody, if you're not paying attention, there are 3 entrepreneurs here who have started and run their businesses. And one thing I don't think that we're taught, I'm not just talking about, well, yes, I'm talking about black people. We're not taught, you know, to go out and build your own from the bottom up. And this generation of millennials and Gen Zs, yes, it's more prominent on social media. But the key thing that I also want to say before I get to my main point is that as clinicians, we're not also taught how to run a business.
Not at all.
It's a learn as you go thing. So one thing I'll never forget when we started, and I'm going to get to the point from where your story was, I'll never forget that we got a compliment for responding to emails. That's why I always answer emails, because we email people back, hey, we don't have enough clinicians. We'll have to put you on the wait list. And I noticed it happened twice. I'll never forget. They said, well, at least you answered your emails. I can't get a hold of anybody else. And in my head, I was thinking, I'm going to answer all these emails. Reason being is I can understand why another clinician wouldn't, because they don't understand the importance of your branding of your business and responding to potential customers who will become your clients. But to what the point that I wanted to build to what you're saying was, one thing that me and Keith have learned that you did in that moment was you don't say no to an opportunity. You take it and then you see how you can make it work. Because saying no could be a byproduct of imposter syndrome. You just ruined an opportunity to build something great. Because me and Keith been doing this business since 2025 now. 2019. I literally I've taken a lot of business seminars, and one thing I've learned from listening to people who host them is they hardly ever know how they're going to make certain things work. They just get in there and they go, to your point, fill in the gap, like you said, like social workers say, what's the need? What skill set do I have to fill that gap? All right, I'm going to go from there. Because at the end of the day, they don't know what you know. They just know that you're here to facilitate this service. So the ups and downs and the pitfalls that may come about, only you will know it. You'll catch it and fix it. So I thought that was a really good story because you didn't turn down the opportunity. You just said, let me figure out how to make this work. And I think that is lost on a lot of people because in business, for other clinicians and those black people out there looking to do your own, a lot of it really is figuring out how to make the ends meet, problem solve, and make it work. So I thought that was a really good part of that story that I wanted to highlight. Moving to the next main question. What are some issues, given everything that you've done? You've done the clinical part. Now you're preparing another generation of clinical social workers to come out there, and you're still doing your part with the clinical part as well. I didn't want to gloss over that. So you've literally counsel, you're teaching, and you're giving back. What do you feel from your experience are some of the issues that are overlooked within the black community?
So,
or just in general. Sorry.
No. Interestingly enough, when you were just stating that about the imposter syndrome part, it really made me think about, and it connects to this question. I think as black people, because we are so marginalized and because of the stereotypes and all the things that get pressed upon us, I think it leads a lot to us not jumping out after these opportunities in some ways. Because when you think about, and I will not quote any research because I don't know it exactly, but it's out there about white men applying for and occupying positions that they are not technically qualified for, right? And how black folks, especially women, don't do that. You assume you're not qualified or it doesn't read exactly right, and so you don't do it. But that leads to your question of issues that I think are overlooked, and I think it is just the weight of carrying your blackness in certain spaces, and the weight of, I think in our community sometimes your output being really equated to your value. So that kind of creates a space where we work harder and we work through anxiety, we work through maybe bouts of depression, we work through being overtired, we work through grief, we work through loss, and you just push and you push and you work harder and you work harder, and we don't name it as mental health issues, right? We don't call it what's actually happening, and because of that, you don't slow down enough to actually address what's happening. And so outwardly, you're looking like, oh man, you doing it, right? Your job is going well, your family's going well, you're doing all these things really great. But internally, you are slowly going about the business of shutting down. Yes. And I think that is incredibly problematic in the black community, especially with high functioning folks in the black community.
I would agree with that 1,000%, especially because the buzzword phrase is high functioning depression these days, given that within our community we're always pushing and pushing through. We don't got time to stop. We don't have time to grieve. These ends have to meet. The opportunities aren't just there. And something else you said that was very impactful or resonated with me is that thinking that you're not qualified for a position where white men will feel like whether I'm qualified or not, I'm at least throw my hat in the ring, and they get to probably to their own surprise too. Oh, dang, I got the job. All right. Well, there I go. And there I am. I think that is actually a really, really good point. But so then let me ask this question to you. Do you feel like that is a learned behavior in our community as far as, and I'm going back to the pushing through thing. Do you feel like that's a learned behavior?
I do. I think it's definitely a learned behavior. I think it's often has been a necessary behavior.
Yeah.
I don't think we've been afforded opportunities for rest. I don't think we've been afforded opportunities historically for making an appointment with one of us. Like that's just not what our history has looked like. And I think that these moments and meeting of people like us to sit around and have these kind of conversations is so important, because that tide is shifting. It is changing, and we want to make sure that we are having the conversation so people can say, you know what, I hadn't thought about it that way. I am doing that. And it doesn't mean that you drop all your responsibilities. Life doesn't work like that, but you do pick up a phone or an email and you reach out to someone like us, and you allow us to join with you to kind of navigate through that.
Fair enough. This is a off the cuff question that came as you were sharing that thought. With the experience you bring to the mental health field, with everything you've done, you've achieved one of the highest degrees that you can get within academia and within your field. How many people do you see that look like you in certain spaces, within our field, within the mental health field? How many people do you see?
Not enough. Not enough, especially men. Oh my gosh, especially men. I see more Black women in the space as a therapist, but not nearly enough. And I think it's going to be more difficult, which is that's honestly why I went into the professor realm, was representation matters.
Yes.
And it was so interesting to be on campus and people stopping you and saying like, oh, well, what department are you in? I'm undecided major. And then, you shoot your shot. Well, come on over. We got room for you in social work. Right.
Yes.
And it's everything. And the perception of social work, the perception of social work has never been glamorous. Right. It's always like, oh, you're about to go snatch some babies. Right. No, we're not. Oh, you're going to be like serving the community, and not that that's a bad thing, but serving the community in a vow of poverty for yourself, and all that kind of stuff, right? And so it was so important to me to be a face and representing social work in a way that was really different, to draw more Black and brown folks into our field, and especially the clinical space, since that's my area.
Fair enough. No, and I see nothing wrong with a little bit of recruitment, because the reason why I had asked that question is going back to what I said about mental health being Eurocentrically dominant. I feel like the reason being is there's not enough of us in certain rooms, in certain spaces, to inform how we should be treated. And when I say treated, I mean socially, yes, but also medically and treated as far as therapy is concerned. So shifting to you, little brother, and me, because now it's our time. Don't worry, Dr. Bell, we're coming back to you. Can you give a little history on yourself, little brother? Literally how you got started in this work. How did you get started? And what led to you wanting to create this podcast with your big brother?
That is always a fun question to answer.
I actually like answering this question because... You want me to go first?
It's up to you. You go first. You go first.
No, you go. I had to ask you the question, but I enjoy answering this question because it's funny.
Well, no, I'll put it this way. The longer I stay doing this work, the more I just kind of feel like it was kismet. Like it was just meant to be. Because in growing up, there's always just been this fascination about people. Yes. And this fascination about, well, why do they say that? Why do they behave that way? Why do they show up that way? Why do they interact with each other that way? In my mind, younger, thinking to myself, just being nosy. I'm just naturally nosy. Not necessarily realizing that it was something deeper, something more empathetic. And I realized I had to stop saying nosy, because nosy is usually like kind of, in my mind, attached to being judgy or judgmental. Wanting to know something so you can judge people. But no, it was something more empathetic in the sense of wanting to understand, like, okay, well, why do my parents show up the way they show up? Why are the dynamics the way they are within my family, within my friend circles, within the world around me? Just always been curious about that. So that just kind of led me to, when I got into college, that just kind of led me to like the humanities and the social sciences. Because initially it was going to be, I'm going to do political science. I'm going to become a politician, the mayor of DC or city council, yada, yada, yada. That only lasted for like maybe one semester. and that kind of fell off. But then what ended up happening was I took an introduction to African American Studies, and I fell in love with it. So in undergrad, my major was African American Studies, but then that led to a cross course with sociology. So I took intro to sociology, and for me, it was like an aha moment. It's like, oh, that makes sense. These things make sense to me. So that led to like, okay, I'm going to major in these things. And then I had a great conversation with our great father. He's like, it's wonderful that you found these majors. That's great. What you going to do after college? I did not have an answer. I did not have an answer. So I did what most young people do. I defaulted. And my default was my best friend. And I know I said this before. I'm going to say this again. Shout out to Jamila. Now she's Jamila Darku. But back then when I knew her, she was Jamila Minkins. Jamila, my best friend from high school, she was a social work major up the street from Old Dominion University, go Monarchs, at Norfolk State, and go Spartans. And so Jamila was going into her MSW program at Howard, and she was a year ahead of me. So I just kind of figured, oh, well, you know what? If Jamila's doing social work, and you ever had that friend that just makes all the right decisions, and it just seems like it just works out for them? I said, well, she's going to do it, then I could do that. It worked out for her, it worked out for me. I just happened to be lucky enough to where as though it did. So when I landed at Temple University, when I landed in Philadelphia, I got into this MSW program. I was thinking, because I still had a very limited knowledge about social work, okay, I'll get into child welfare. I love kids. But then I found out there was a clinical concentration. And so I explored that, and I realized, okay, I could do this clinical track, and then realized I could become a therapist. And then just kind of followed that path, and that led to where we are today. But even in between from where we are today, that also led to, yes, getting involved in child welfare, but also getting involved in supporting unhoused individuals, but ultimately clinical work of working with people at this particular level in this particular way. That's very, and contrary to what some people may think, very organized, very strategic, very evidence-based.
What made you want to go out and get your doctorate?
Oh my God.
I wasn't trying to be petty. You're going to love the story, though.
This is him being petty. I'm for it.
I wasn't trying to be. It was a natural progression of the question.
I think, you know what?
Because we're reintroducing ourselves to you guys, everybody. It's our third or fourth.
I think this is season 3.
Whatever the
season 4.
This might be season 4. Y'all, it's season 4. It's the 4th season. Okay. We're reintroducing ourselves because we have a new co-host.
Okay,
but it is, you're going to love this story.
It's
go right ahead.
It is semi-petty, but I can't be mad because I would do the same thing to him. So it was a 50-50 split for the record of how this happened. So 50% of it was I will give my brother his flowers.
It's more than 50-50. Go ahead.
I will give my brother his flowers.
I'm gonna tell y'all exactly what he said. Go right ahead.
I'm gonna give my brother his flowers. It was 50-50 because Brian at the time, he was in his doctoral program. And we have to spend an episode on your doctoral experience because that journey was like...
Yeah, my doctoral journey was
that
long.
Was just... It was wow. But I will give this man his flowers in the sense of he stayed committed to the process and he saw all the way through.
I did.
But Brian was getting, at the time, his EDD that evolved into a PhD. And so, yes, it was an ego-driven... Yeah. Because it was a case of we had conversations about going to practice with each other once we kind of realized, and that's also I feel like this was Kesmet because me and my brother came into mental health independent from each other. Me and Brian have always loved each other, but we've always just kind of like done our own things, been in our own circles, reconnect whenever we need to reconnect, and just kind of go forth. So we ended up doing mental health separate from each other, and then converge, of course, in all great places. Our mom's living room. Mm-hmm. And he was like, Mom, tell me you're doing social work. You can do that. I'm becoming a therapist. He's like, oh, I'm in a master's program studying psychology. It's like, oh. And even then, not even having a full conversation, I think for both of us, a spark just kind of went off. It was like, okay, let's just see what the other person does. And so we ended up both going through our programs, getting licensed, right? So long story short, even though it's still long, it dawned on me, this man's going to have a PhD. We're going to be in business together. That means he's going to be referred to as Dr. Sutton, and I'm just going to be Mr. Sutton. That just could not stand.
Hey, I love that part of the story.
That just could not stand.
I don't blame him though. I would have said
like naturally so.
Yeah, because it's like in a pivot. It's like, oh, wait a minute now.
I'll be honest. I'll be honest. That did not stand. So that became a huge catalyst. The other part of it,
and he finished his degree before me.
Well,
he finished it before me too. He started after me and finished before me.
The structure, in all fairness, it was the structure of our program.
It was the structure of the program. But still, I even called him. I said, dang, I was happy for him. And I even told, so we gonna produce, how much time's left? I'm sorry.
You still got more than 30.
Thank you. All right. So I had to do a time check real quick, everybody. I apologize. So look, I have a personal gripe with the way certain PhD programs are structured. Mine's being the clinical mental health PhD, which is counseling, education, and supervision, right? So you've heard them say that they are licensed clinical social workers. I am a licensed clinical professional counselor. We do the same thing in different ways. By and large, if you Google the curriculums, you will see the sheer difference of the two things, right? I'm not going to do a curriculum breakdown because then that's a whole episode in and of itself,
exactly.
Right? I always equate it to, since we're on this topic, it was weird because me and him went out one time with somebody. We went out to lunch. I didn't know there was like this really weird rivalry going on among psychologists, counselors, and social workers. I didn't know that was a thing.
For some people who
for some
insecure.
people, I don't engage in it. I don't engage in the shenanigans. I don't. I didn't know that was a thing. But to the point that I'm trying to make is that I think that my path to the PhD, aside from that, was a long path in and of itself. That is the caveat to what I'm about to say. I told my younger brother this, that I feel like the PhD track for my field is long for no reason. Meaning that it's particularly when you start to get to the internships phase, because we have to do 3 internships at one time.
Internships in your doc program?
Yeah, you have to do internships there.
Yep. See, I had that same look.
Yes,
I was like,
we literally
you did that in your master's program.
I did it in my master's program, and I did it again in my doctoral program. And that was one of the reasons that held it up, because you have 5 domains in counseling, right? Counseling, supervision, education, research, and advocacy. At your internship, you have to pick 3 of them to do at the exact same time. Yes, so you would have to counsel, supervise, and teach. And my biggest issue with that was, if I was going to be a psychologist, I would just have to see clients and keep it moving. The other thing that was a gripe for me was the dissertation process. It used to be, it's over depending on how fast you get it done. My program, you got to be here for at least 4 semesters, 4 quarters, 4 semesters. That's the equivalent of a year. So it's an additional year on top of all the time that you took. That's why I said, I even told Keith's my witness. I said, I think that his degree was the better route. I think that you shouldn't have to go through all of that. I get the concept of rigor, and now that I'm on the other side of it, I get why, but I do think that it doesn't need to be structured that way. It just does not need to be structured that way.
He's not wrong, because in listening to him, it was like, I can't say what I want to say because I'm trying to keep it PG. It was some wild stuff. That's a nice way of saying it. It was some wild stuff. But the funny thing is, I feel like we chose doctoral programs that play to our strengths. Mm-hmm. Like I said earlier, like he feels I'm the better clinician, and I feel as though he's way stronger in theory. Our doctoral selections and experiences reflect that. I chose a practice doctorate, as in like my area of strength will always be in practice and delivering it, executing it, structuring it, all that jazz. Yours is, and he's still great at practice, yours is more so like very research based. Was like, okay, I need to understand how this functions, why it functions the way this functions, more importantly, how do we figure out this problem and solve it in a way that's actually like measurable, quantifiable. And so I gave him this analogy before because I feel like it's true. It's the difference, in my opinion, and this is no shade to a practice degree. I'm just speaking specifically for us. I am a great cook. the same way that your mother, your granddaddy, your grandmama is a great cook. They just know, like, they can feel it and just kind of throw that proper seasoning in there. They can time it. They don't even have to put the timer on. They just know, like, it feels like it's been an hour. That needs to come out. And they can cook it, and you get a very hearty, delicious, fulfilling meal. He is a great chef. He wants to understand, why do these flavors go together? How do they complement each other? At what temperature does this need to be cooked, and why does it need to be cooked that way?
He's right.
And
I do.
Exactly. So that's how I feel like we complement each other. But that, like that, because again, like I told you, we can veer off quickly. That's how I.
No, I appreciate it.
But the other 50%, I have to acknowledge. The other 50%, I have to acknowledge. Because he was the catalyst for it. But the other 50% was one realizing, as he pointed out, there wasn't a lot of black men or black people that had doctorates. And then even thinking about, and I acknowledge my privilege, I went to undergrad and I had Dr. Charles Wilson, shout out to Dr. Wilson, who cherry picked me at an NAACP event, saw me sitting there my freshman year by myself. He said, "You look like you need a mentor." I was like, sure. I did not know at the time he was the vice provost of the university. So I would go to his office at least 2 times out the month. I would sit there across from him at his desk. He's like, "How class is going?" It's like, "They're going good." He's like, "You know I can put up transcripts, right?" It's like, "I know, but they're going pretty good." It's okay. Well, you need to be more involved. Well, you're doing the NAACP. Why are you not president? I became president of NAACP. Well, what are you thinking about? And
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I started off the secretary, then vice president, then president of ODU's NAACP.
I didn't know that.
Well, work our way up. But that's because of Dr. Wilson. Dr. Wilson was really adamant that, like, you need to be more involved on campus. You know, have these different experiences. He was just there to kind of make sure that as a black man in the university, that I was participating in the university. And then, of course, the funny thing is, my last year at ODU, he transitioned from being the vice provost to being the dean of my college. So then I had to travel all the way to the top because at the time, BAL, Batten's College of Arts and Letters, was the tallest building on campus. And I think he was all the way like on the 8th or 9th floor. So I had to go all the way up there to see him. And so when I was thinking about you, I also thought about him. And I didn't connect the dots until I got older, and I realized how privileged was I to be sitting across from a black man with his PhD who always made me feel as though I was his equal, and that I could arise to the occasion, and that I could be where I'm at right now. And maybe in Dr. Wilson's case, whenever I talk to him, I love that man so much. Sometimes even saying, I feel as though you can go even further.
And you know, Q, that was actually a really good comprehensive story, because you're right. That's how I got. If it wasn't for Dr. J, James Maiden, he's a clinical consultant and supervisor at our practice. I met him when I was getting my master's degree in clinical mental health counseling, and he came to me and said, "You need to apply to a doctoral program." I'm a black kid from the projects. I was like, "I'm not doctor material. What are you talking about?" I'm just happy to be here. So he said, "No, I set you up an interview. I'm not gonna go down the whole road of my experience. Like I said, that could be an episode in and of itself."
Exactly.
And you indicated you have a long story too. He set up an interview. I did an interview with the dean of a program for a university that's no longer here. I interviewed her. She said, "I like it. I like you. I'm gonna let you into our doctoral program." If it wasn't for another black man, the same way you did, seeing in me something I didn't see in myself, if it wasn't for Dr. James Maiden, I would not be Dr. B today. And I truly appreciate and love him for that. The reason why I got into mental health was, for me, I wanted to better understand myself, why I reacted the way I reacted. I used to have a really bad attitude and anger problem, just like most people that grew up in the environment we grew up in. But I always was fascinated as to how come.
Yeah.
How come I'm always reacting this way? And then when I got into my master's program, so my master's degree is actually in psychology, and my undergraduate degree is actually in social science. I couldn't get to a university that had an actual psychology undergraduate degree. But when I was doing my research for my thesis for my master's degree, I learned that emotional dysregulation, as we talked about, is not a mental health disorder. It's just a mental health feature common in certain disorders. That was what I was fascinated with. And in doing research for the causes of it, it's literally not boring everybody with the minutia of the research. But if you grew up in an impoverished neighborhood in a single family home that was full of crime with lack of opportunity, it contributed greatly to that. My mind exploded in that moment. I said, there's a lot of people I know that are like that. And then once I got that revelation that it's not just all me, there are other factors that came into play, it made me want to run off and do more mental health. So I ended up doing clinical mental health counseling, because in order to become a psychologist, you have to quit your job, go to the brick and mortar, and get the degree. Well, I just got out of the military, had my first daughter at the time. That's not an option. But clinical mental health was an option. You can do it online, or you can go to a brick and mortar. I went to a brick and mortar, and then I went and did the interview that my mentor said, and then I ended up finishing my doctoral degree, and that's how I ended up here as far as being Dr. Brian, having our own private practice, having our own podcast, and that's how we all ended up here today. But turning it back to Dr. Gigi Bell, now that you're with us, what do you hope to convey to the people while you're here? What do you hope to talk about, bring to this podcast? We've been lacking a female voice for the longest. We've said this on multiple episodes, and we're very excited to have you here. What do you want to give to the people? What do you hope to, get out of all of this for everybody listening?
Well, I think you said it, just a female perspective, right? And I think that it's funny when you were describing the cook and the chef, I was like, I feel like I'm a little bit of both of those things. And I think even in the degrees that I pursued is a mix of both of those things. So I am very interested. And I think that when you work with people in social work, the way that we work with people is just a bit of like you feel your way through it. You know what you know. Facts. And it's like, yeah, and we're done here. You did great, you know? And then on the psychology side.
Your therapist voice, you did great.
You did great. Good job, honey. And then on the other side, the psychology side, the professor side, the research side, right? It's that much more clinical, methodical thinking of like measuring interventions and how do they work, and am I being effective in this space, and being able to do program evaluations and client outcome surveys and all those things that I don't think traditionally social workers always think about including in their practice, but it's very important to me that I can show outcome measurements in my practice. So, so I think that is what I'm bringing: the female perspective, my own personal experience and perspective, the blending. I feel like I'm just kind of right the barometer in the middle of you guys, and I think it'll be a really well-rounded conversation.
Okay. Well, everybody, that concludes this episode for today. You know the usual: like, subscribe, comment, share, and join us here again for the next episode at Forward's Therapeutic Podcast with your host, Dr. B.
Dr. Lakeith.
And now,
Dr. Gigi.
And we will see you next time. Bye. All right.